Hi, guys. Welcome to this live stream. You can write your questions in the chat. I marked it so that you can see it. And in the end, I will answer your questions if possible. And now let's talk about the topic. And I want to point out that that's a lot of text. So it's about 40 minutes, I think. In German, it was 35 minutes. So if you want to read it, I will publish the blog post soon. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I have a lot of blog posts to publish. I can show you. All that are not pink have still to be published. And there are more. Here are some not marked. And here as well, some. So, yeah, it's a lot to do. Don't know when or why, just have to do it. Discipline. Okay, let's start with the topic. Life in a car or in a tiny house. Which is better? Your questions, my answers. The questions I get most often come from people who don't know either lifestyle, neither living in a car nor living in a tiny house. How do you go to the bathroom? Where do you shower? How do you stay warm? What does it cost? And are you truly free or just restricted? In this live stream, I'll answer all of these questions honestly and openly. After 7 years living in a car and now 3 months in a tiny house, I'll share what has really changed, what has stayed the same, and where even I was surprised. This live will be available in November in 6 languages on my international channels. You can read them on my blog. And here you'll find the schedule with all dates and languages. There's a link in the blog post. 1. Hygiene. Living in a car versus living in a tiny house. When it comes to hygiene, things have changed less than most people think. Now I have my own camping toilet in the tiny house. I empty it in the washroom on the camping site. There's also a regular toilet there that I can use, and when I'm out, I go to cafes or public restrooms. Before, it was much more complicated. I was constantly looking for a clean toilet in cafes, hardware stores, furniture shops, or shopping centers. Sometimes I had to wait in line forever, and sometimes it was just gross because I had to clean the toilet before I could use it. And if it was closed, I had to get back in the car and find another one. At night, I usually parked at the edge of the forest, so I could simply go into the woods in the morning. Because honestly, it's too much to ask to drive several kilometers after waking up just to be able to pee. Showers, that hasn't really changed. I take one shower a week in the campsite washroom and another one in the swimming pool or climbing gym. I don't have a shower in the house, so that part is basically the same. What has improved is washing myself. Now I can do that in the tiny house where I have real privacy. Privacy or privacy? I think that's regional. That's actually a big step forward. Doing laundry was even easier in the summer because I had a small washing machine, but I had to, now I know why it translated Maschinku. It's not a small washing machine, it's a normal washing machine. Let me check. So I will mark this in red so that I can find it later and change it in French, Spanish, and Italian, because in Russian we already changed it today, and I didn't realize it was wrong in the other languages. So it's a normal washing machine. But I had to carry 10 buckets of water over 50 meters to the washroom since there's no drain at the house. It was a bit of a workout, but at least it was cheap. Now in winter, I go back to the laundromat without a car. That means trolley, 30 minutes to the train station, 1 hour by train, 10 minutes walking. Before I could just drive there, much easier. Cleaning is definitely more work now. Before, I only vacuumed the car occasionally, cleaned the windows, and once a year paid for a full interior cleaning. I think you say detailing. Expensive, but super satisfying. Now I have more surfaces to vacuum, mop and wipe, plus dishes to wash after cooking. But it stays cleaner and tidier because everything has its place. What I miss is a little what I miss a little is variety. I used to go swimming in different rivers. Now I rarely do that because it takes too long by public transport. But I do have mountain streams and the lake right in front of my door. Only thing is, I'm hardly ever alone there. Too many tourists. 2. Sleep. Living in a car versus living in a tiny house. Now, after 3 months in the tiny house, as the colder months begin, I can really tell which is better, sleeping in a car or in a tiny house. In terms of how it feels to lie down, almost nothing has changed. I still have the same mattress as before. It just rests on wood now instead of a car seat, so it's a bit firmer. A thicker mattress would be difficult because the sleeping platform is quite low. I could also sleep under the slanted part. There's room there for my thinner mattresses on top of the bouldering mat. What I love about sleeping in the car was waking up in nature. Sometimes I saw the sunrise or sunset right from my bed, by a lake, by the sea, in the mountains, or on a hill. Once there was a herd of peacefully grazing cows right next to me. Another time in France, 2 wild horses. There were mornings and evenings when I went swimming in a river or waterfall right before sleeping or right after waking up. Those places in Auvergne, in Tuscany, were often beautifully quiet, surrounded by nature, and that was priceless. But I never knew if I would actually sleep through the night. Music, engines, voices. Sometimes I was woken up in the middle of the night, or I even had to drive away because the noise was unbearable. That was hard because I take medication to help me sleep through the night. It feels like opening a bottle of wine on. What is it with this train? There's no train there. Well, what it means, because it's a saying, it means you open a bottle of wine, you start drinking, and you keep drinking until it's empty. Is there any expression for that? I will mark that again in red. I changed it today, but I didn't quite understand what I had written. Okay, so Well, that's how it feels like. Or lying down right after a sauna session. Well, it's not only a sauna session. Why can some things not be translated correctly? I don't know. It's in the sauna when somebody is putting water on a hot stone and then waving with, not a magic wand, with a towel in the sauna, and you get quite hot. I get hot thinking about that. And it's extremely, extremely tiring and relaxing. So, yeah. So this combination, drink a bottle of wine without stopping and have this kind of sauna session. And then you know how I feel when I take these drugs, legal drugs. Driving in that state was really irresponsible, but sometimes I had no choice. In the tiny house, it's different, but not completely silent either. I live by a lake and a road, and it's often noisy. Sports cars, motorcycles, trucks with rattling cargo. On summer weekends, there were sometimes drunk people wandering around my house at night. That has thankfully calmed down. I was also really glad when it got cooler and I could close the windows. Now the sound insulation is much better than in the car. And more importantly, I've realized something. When it gets loud, I don't have to jump up and drive away anymore. I can just stay. The noise passes and I can go back to sleep. That's probably the biggest difference, not the sleep itself, but the security of being allowed to stay. 3. Movement. Living in a car versus living in a tiny house. In the first year that I lived in my car, I lost 20 kilos without doing anything special to make it happen. I just moved so much more. Okay, I also ate less, but I'll talk about that later. Simply by parking in nature most mornings and evenings and wanting to see my surroundings or go swimming in a river or waterfall, I automatically reached 10 to 20,000 steps a day, sometimes even more. From November 2019 onward, my project Hosts by the Water began. I published a new issue every month with hiking trails and parking spots, and that meant thousands of extra steps because I needed photos of specific places. I was constantly on the move, discovering new lakes, rivers, and paths. I also went swimming much more often than before because I used swimming pools to shower. That was exercise, self-care, and joy all at once. In 2024, bouldering became a part of my life, and now I can even do it at home. I have a small climbing wall inside my tiny house, and when I want to, I can just climb for a while. Jogging has also become easier because now I always have a shower nearby. But there's another side to it. Before living in the car, I was too depressed to have the energy to move. It was actually through living in the car that I overcame my depression. Through movement, through constant change, through dopamine, adrenaline, and endorphins. I was outdoors all the time, discovering new things, and that reactivated my whole system from the inside out. Now, in the tiny house, the danger of falling back into old patterns is bigger. It's more comfortable, safer, quieter, but also more tempting to just stay still. If I don't consciously plan trips and challenges, I notice how quickly I slip into routine. Watching series, eating snacks, moving less. So movement used to be something natural in the car. Now it's something I have to plan. And that for me is one of the biggest changes of all. 4. Food. Part 1. The first year in the car. By far the best my diet has ever been was during the first year I lived in my car. I had a very simple routine. In the morning, a pastry with coffee. At lunchtime, a salad with fish. Or back then, sometimes with chicken breast. And in the evening, often just a handful of nuts. That was it. No pudding, no cookies, no big dinners. I simply ate when I was hungry and stopped when I was full. Even after I came back from Tenerife, I kept that habit. A small breakfast in a cafe, a healthy lunch in a restaurant, and that was all. I spent a lot of time outdoors, always moving, and my meals were light, fresh, and simple. I didn't have to plan anything, store anything, or clean up much afterwards. And that did me a lot of good, physically and mentally. Food Part 2, from 2020 until today. Starting in 2020, my eating habits completely changed. During the pandemic, I couldn't go to cafes or restaurants anymore. And once I began buying food in supermarkets, the temptation to eat more suddenly appeared. Supermarket packages are designed to last for several days, but I didn't have a fridge, so I usually finished everything quickly so it wouldn't go bad. Then in August 2020, I quit smoking, and suddenly every hour that I would have lit a cigarette before, I craved something sweet. And I gave in way too often. In the winter of 2020-21, I couldn't go to Tenerife because of the travel restrictions. That was a really difficult time for me. I was barely outside, sitting in the car most of the day, driving around the block every half hour just to stay warm. On ice or slush, I walked slowly and carefully instead of briskly as before. I felt uncomfortable, everything was exhausting, and I comforted myself with pudding and cookies. It was a real vicious circle. Swimming pools were closed too, so I lost another source of movement. Since then, I've tried countless times to break this unhealthy eating pattern, but so far I've always fallen back into it. To be honest, the tiny house hasn't changed much about that. I don't enjoy cooking and still eat in cafes almost every day. On top of that, I often have a warm meal for lunch and, unfortunately, cookies in the afternoon. I still have this silly idea in my head that I need to comfort or reward myself. What nonsense, really. My goal is to get back to eating the way I did in Tenerife in 2018 and 2019. Light, healthy, mindful. Wish me luck. 5. Work. Life in the car versus life in the tiny house. In 2020, none of this even existed. No YouTube, no blog. I simply worked in an office in Tenerife, 40 hours a week in the traditional way. Then in 2019, everything changed. I started YouTube, and suddenly work was no longer tied to one place. I worked after hours or before late shifts. Almost every day, I spent 3 hours in cafes or restaurants with my Goal Zero power station and laptop, editing videos and writing texts. From 2019 onward, I also worked in hotels in Munich again, every summer, often on night shifts at the hotel reception. When things were quiet, I edited my videos or wrote my blog there. During late shifts, I worked on my laptop in cafes in the morning. In the winter of 2019-20 in Tenerife, everything was perfect again. Sun, electricity, Wi-Fi, cafes, easy life. But in 2020, with COVID, it turned into a disaster. Suddenly everything was closed. No cafes, no sockets, no Wi-Fi. I kept driving around just to generate power through the 12-volt outlet. The solar panel barely provided enough, and every time I had to use the toilet, I had to dismantle everything. Incredibly inconvenient. After COVID, it got better again, but different. I mostly worked in restaurants, charged my devices at McDonald's, always recharging the Goal Zero to have at least enough power for my iPhone and iPad for the rest of the day. Then in 2023 came my electric car, a huge step forward, an incredible relief. Finally, enough power for my MacBook through the car's socket. And with the parking heater, even winter became pleasant. So expensive. In Tenerife, with the electric car, it was absolutely ideal. I completed my Goethe Institute course online there, studied several hours a day, and spent several more hours working on videos and blog articles. I only worked in an office for 3 weeks and saved an incredible amount of time because I lived in my car on the parking lot across from the company and worked on my MacBook right after work. Then in 2024 came the next big change: early retirement due to reduced earning capacity. And suddenly life became too expensive. No more hotel jobs, and the pension, 1100 euros, is below the minimum living cost. So I decided to build a tiny house, sell the car, and save money in the long run. Despite paying rent for the plot, I now spend less overall because I use only one-fifth of the heating power, 450 watts instead of 1000, and pay 30 cents per kilowatt hour instead of 70. And working in the tiny house is easier than ever. I usually work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., with breaks, of course, and finally have privacy. I don't have to go anywhere, can concentrate, have peace and structure. And when I travel, I work on the iPad, on the train instead of in the car. That may be the greatest progress of all. I no longer work despite my living space. I work within it. 6. Costs. Life in the car versus life in the tiny house, including business expenses. If I add up all the years, life in the car was anything but cheap. From 2018 to July 2025, I had fixed monthly expenses. Just the car payment alone was around 350, plus insurance and tax another 90. Then there were the usual daily costs, food and drinks, about 600 a month, because I ate almost everything in cafes or restaurants. Swimming pools and campsites, 80 euros. Laundromats, another 80 euros. Parking fees in cities, about 40. And public transport in Munich, 100 euros. until the Germany ticket came later. Deutschland ticket. It's a special ticket for 60 euros a month. And then came travel costs. To the ferry to Tenerife cost 280 euros each way, averaging 23 euros per month. And the fuel with the Kodiaks, 7 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers and 20,000 kilometers a year, that was around 200 euros a month. With the ENIAC, it wasn't cheaper, about 230 a month in winter with heating. During COVID, everything became even more expensive. I was constantly driving to heat the car and produce electricity, and since cafes were closed, the only option was highway rest stops. 70 cents per toilet visit, 5 times a day. That's over 100 euros a month just for the restroom, plus about 40 euros for showers, since I paid 5 euros twice a week. And then the hidden costs. About 300 euros a year for interior car cleaning or detailing. Expensive, but always satisfying. Between 1,000 and 3,000 a year for repairs, tires, inspections, and sometimes a rental car. During COVID, there was an extreme case. From January to July 2020, I had to rent a car for about 600 euros a month because my Kodiak was stuck on Tenerife. Ferries were suspended. Then came the return flight in July, 150 euros just to pick up the car again. And in 2023, I had rental car costs again from March to August, 900 euros a month, because Skoda supposedly would cover it, but in the end, they only reimbursed 300 euros per month. All in all, living in the car wasn't cheap at all. It usually cost between 1,500 and 1,700 per month. And in some months, with repairs or rental cars, even over 2,000 euros. Apart from personal costs, there were also my business expenses. 100 euros for the German SIM with unlimited data, and about 50 for a second SIM for Spain, France, or Italy. Then WordPress, YouTube Premium, Skillshare, Canva, Fiverr for video editing, and italki for my teachers and proofreaders. These are ongoing costs, without which my project couldn't function. Most of them are now covered by my income, Patreon, Shop, YouTube, Google AdSense, eBay, and Amazon. But it's always a balancing act between what I need and what I can afford. Compared to that, the tiny house is much cheaper. I pay 300 euros per month for the plot lease, with utilities already included. That's why it doesn't really matter what I now use about that I now use about 450 instead of 1000 watts with the infrared heating at 30 cents instead of 70 cents per kilowatt hour. In the end, I still save more than I expected. Then in the blog post, you can find a table with all the costs as an overview. And then totals excluding outliers, life in the car 1,550 to 1,700 per month, with repairs or rental cars up to 2,000 to 2,200. Tiny house 1,150 to 1,250 per month. Financial summary: when you add everything up, living in the car was much more expensive than it looks. Between loan payments, insurance, fuel or electricity, eating out and repairs, I was almost always between 1,500 and 1,700 a month. and in months with rental cars, ferries, or major repairs, even over 2,000. Now in the tiny house, things are much more manageable. I pay 300 euros for the lease, including utilities, have no more car expenses, no mechanic, no insurance, no tax. Food costs are split differently, about 200 euros for cafes and 300 euros for supermarket groceries. The Germany ticket costs 63 euros. Then come my business expenses, phone, internet, platforms, tools, teachers, around 250 to 300 euros. So all in all, I now spend around 1,150 to 1,250 per month, saving 400 to 600 euros compared to life in the car. But more than anything, I'm saving my nerves. 7. Feeling. Part 1. From surviving to living. Now that I've been living in the tiny house for 3 months, I can say pretty clearly how it feels. Life in the car was an emotional roller coaster, constant ups and downs. Every single day was filled with uncertainty. Where can I sleep tonight? Can I even sleep there at all? Where will I go to the toilet tomorrow? Where can I wash? Where can I work and when? At the hotel, I often had double shifts or quick turnarounds. Uh, is it really quick turnarounds? I doubt that. I will mark that in red. It means, for example, you work night shift, then in the morning, the manager tells you that you have to come back at 3 p.m. because your colleague is ill. And then you can stay for 8 hours in a hotel room, and then you come back to work again, another shift. Is that a quick turnaround? I will check that, and if I find another solution to express that, I will put it in the blog post. I never knew exactly how much I'd earn in a month, whether the money would be enough or how much the next repair would cost. And during COVID came the fear of losing the car altogether. No shower, no toilet, no space to breathe. The winter of 2020-21 was the lowest point, minus 20 degrees. I honestly wondered if I would make it through. It was always a balancing act between holding on and giving up, between freezing and driving, between wanting and having to. Compared to that, life in the tiny house feels simple. It's a beautiful and honest ending, quiet, vulnerable, but full of hope. Uh, this is not what I wanted to say. This is a comment on what I wrote. Okay, compared to that, life in the tiny house feels simple. Feeling part 2, arriving and letting go. Of course, during the first weeks in the tiny house, I had trouble settling in. At first, I still called my house the car. Then it became, that's not translatable. The car house, maybe. The house car. Whatever. In German, it's a mixture. And at some point, I simply said, I'm going home to my little house. That was a small but meaningful moment. In the first nights, I often panicked. I couldn't lock the door, and because I live right next to the road, sometimes at night drunk people would stumble around the house. After a week, Benjamin from the construction company came on his day off and finally adjusted the door. Since then, I've been able to lock it, and that made a huge difference. Still, for weeks, I woke up several times every night. at every sigh, every cough outside, every little movement of the house. It shakes when a truck passes by or when someone steps on the stairs on the terrace. Only when it got cooler in the loft bedroom, not 25 degrees or more, and I could keep the windows closed at night, did things start to calm down. By now, I wake up maybe every third or fourth night when there's a knock somewhere or the house sways slightly. I think I will get even better once. I think it will get even better once I can move to a village at the edge of town, maybe near the forest or a field. Keep your fingers crossed that I find such a place. I'm currently looking for a room in a house with space to park my garden cabin on wheels. That's what I call the tiny house now when I speak with landlords or authorities. Because it turned out that my individually designed house doesn't meet the regulations for an official dwelling. So I'm technically not allowed to live in it permanently. That means a room with a parking spot is, for now, the only long term solution. Since I no longer have a car, I sometimes feel a bit lonely. I see my family and friends less often because no one wants to travel as far as or as often as I used to. But I think that will get easier once I truly settle somewhere, when I stay put and new friendships can grow from that. And best of all, I've found a way to see my sons once a month. How exactly, I'll tell you in the next life. 8. Conclusion. From being on the road to arriving. After 7 years in the car and 3 months in a tiny house, I can say both were important. The car gave me freedom, movement, and healing. The tiny house gives me peace, structure, and stability. And both are part of who I am. I've learned that freedom doesn't mean being somewhere new every day. It means having the choice of when and where to stay. And that home is not a place, but a feeling, one that slowly grows when you allow it to. I'm grateful for all those years on the road, for the lessons they taught me, and for this new chapter that's now beginning. Life in the tiny house is simpler, calmer, and more predictable, but it's still my home on wheels. If you'd like to read more about it, visit my blog. There, I regularly publish articles in 6 languages with photos, diary entries, and updates about my life in the tiny house. And at the end of each month, you'll always find a new blog post with the full schedule for all upcoming live sessions. Subscribe to the blog so you don't miss anything, and join me live as the next chapter begins. polyglotmona.com. Bye. No questions. Bye.